This is Capturing Light, episode number 160 with Pedro Gomez Millan.
Welcome to Capturing Light, a director of photographers podcast, spotlighting cinematography tips, tools, and techniques, inspiring and educating filmmakers like you so you can illuminate your vision. And now, your host, Les Gaddis.
Thanks so much for joining and listening to the podcast. I'm your host, Les Gaddis, and today we are talking to Pedro Gomez Millan, an amazing cinematographer who currently is showing some of his work via Disney Plus. You might ask what that work is. Well, I am here to tell you, boys and girls, that work is his work on Daredevil Born Again. I'm a big Daredevil fan. I've been waiting for this for a long time, and I'm excited to talk to Pedro because it's been fun kind of catching up and watching the series, and there was some really cool things that Pedro shared that really opened up my eyes to the aesthetic of the film, or the series rather, where I was wondering why I was feeling a certain way while watching it. And then after talking to Pedro, I'm like, oh, that's why, because it was intentional. It's because of visual language. That's such a thing. Who knew? But anyway, yeah, Pedro is a great cinematographer. Love really talking to him, connecting with him, and it was a fun conversation. I think you'll enjoy it. Here is that conversation with Pedro Gomez Millan. All right, so I want to thank Pedro Gomez Millan, AMC, to the Capture Light podcast. How are you going? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Les. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to chatting with you about Daredevil Born Again. But before we do that, for people that might not be familiar with your story, could you talk a little bit about how you got started in the film industry?
Yeah, of course. I was born and raised in Mexico City, so I went to college there, and I had my dark room. I was developing black and white photography, and that was kind of like my first approach to film. I think that I didn't know back then, but I was so excited to spend hours in the dark room developing photography.
Hmm.
And I was actually studying philosophy back then, and then I dropped that out. I was reading so much, and I was like kind of like seeing from the library all this life happening. I was like, I need to be outside, man. I need to uh, as much as I love writing and reading back then, I changed to a communication major in Mexico City. Really cool program where a lot of film directors come out, and I started shooting shorts there on film. Actually, Gonzalez Iñárritu came out of that program, so it's pretty good school.
Hmm.
And that's what sparked my interest in cinematography after shooting all my classmates' short films. Everybody's kind of like nervous to touch film and kind of like screw it up. So I was like, I can do it. I've shot 35 stills before, so I applied to NYU later on. After that, I went to New York. After NYU, I started shooting as much as I could,
Hmm.
anything, while I was at NYU and after. And that also gave me like the basics of the independent American film industry, which
Hmm.
is school is still like you don't learn that after that. Like you learn in school, you learn a lot of things, but you learn by doing. So But what the school gave me was like a actually like a very strong community and amazing mentors, and I still talk to all of them. I still collaborate. We after like all these years, we're still active and help each other out. And actually, that's one of the um, most valuable things I got from there. And
Hmm.
after that, I started doing independent films in New York and in Los Angeles. I started flying around anywhere and shooting my colleagues' short films and all over the world. Sometimes I was in Pakistan and in Mexico. Um, and one thing led to another, and one project led to the next, and started doing independent films. And then I did my first TV show in Mexico City. And then I started doing some TV shows, and lately that's what I've been mostly focused on. But also, it's not like it's funny when I was shooting films, I was like, I wish I could shoot some TV.
Hmm.
But now that I've been doing TV, I'm like, I want to go back to those films.
Yeah.
So always the grass is greener.
Right. So, for those of us that haven't had like TV experience versus film experience, could you talk a little bit about the differences between working on a show versus working on a indie film or just a film in general?
Sure. Um, Yeah, I mean, I think the main difference is like on TV you still work with a director and you develop the shots and the shot list, but you kind of like respond to a bigger scope, like the showrunner, basically. Like before the director comes in, I interview and I talk to the showrunner and understand like the show and the story, because directors sometimes come in for an episode or a blog and then they leave and you stay on, so you got to work with the next director. So as much as you work with those directors in terms of like planning the episodes, there's so much more that you have to, as a DP, kind of like keep consistency. And sometimes on TV, like there are great directors that want to come in and do things a little bit that come out of the norm, and sometimes it's great because it's super refreshing for some shows. It's like, we need this director came in and brought so many great ideas, and sometimes it deviates from that vision that the showrunner does. And but I because of all the independent movies I did and going to film school, I was like, always the director is right, like always
Hmm.
support their vision. So at the beginning of my career, when I was start doing those TV shows, um and my first TV show was the showrunner director, so I feel like that doesn't count. But like later on, I was like, well, I'm gonna trust the directors, right? Like they hired them for a reason. But sometimes I found myself feeling, or I think the learning lesson was like I should have been more like stronger, saying like I don't think this is gonna work out. Like being more
Hmm.
specific. There was a show that the director wanted to do like oneers, and it was like a circular dolly,
Hmm.
and it was like shooting 360, and I was like, how am I gonna light this? And it was like on location. We didn't have like, it was like a really high ceiling, so we couldn't even like rig any overhead lights. And I feel like I was bouncing. I found some way to hide some lights, and I was bouncing off the ceiling, but it wasn't the right look, and I was
Hmm.
like, nowadays, like after some more experience, I would have said, no, we can't shoot this way. They have to look right. It was all actresses, like younger actresses. It was a young adult show, but I was like, we have to shoot it a different way. And so that was a learning lesson, that as a DP on a show, you also have a strong opinion on how things are gonna shoot. Not just the director can come in and do whatever they want
Right.
sometimes.
Right. So, kind of switching gears and talking about Daredevil. Um, you were a cinematographer, but over a certain block. So it wasn't like you were shooting all of the episodes. It was you in a collaboration with another cinematographer or a couple of cinematographers. Yes?
Correct. Yes, there were two of us, Hillary and myself, and I shot episodes 4 and 5, and a bunch of additional photography on episodes 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the collaboration like working with Hillary and like how is it, working with also another cinematographer kind of on the same show to, make sure that the look is consistent and things like that. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, it was great. It was like I'm a open collaborator. I mean, I feel like there's certain shows where like every DP kind of like um do their own thing, and they can like learn the how the show is going to look, and they just like go on of their own and do their episodes. But the way I like to work is also like being like bouncing each other ideas off of each other, like, and also watching dailies, like we there's a lot of communication between me and her, and how the show was evolving, and how we can incorporate some techniques, and what were the things that were working and not, because also in a lot of ways, this is a show that has 3 prior seasons, but we wanted to explore new techniques and new things, and like how Matt listens and has hyper senses, and we wanted to visually explore that in a different way. So at the beginning of the show, also there's certain things like, oh, this quite maybe it's not working, or like we start introducing some flares naturally, right? Like these moments look really great, when there's certain flares, and we can pan the camera and catch something on the lenses. So that collaboration kind of like evolved as the show did. We had an opportunity to kind of like stop for a second, because of the strike, and kind of like look back at how were things looking, and you don't have that luxury in a lot of projects. You just go and kind of like find it on once that train is moving. But the good thing is, like, we regroup, and we're like, okay, this is what's working, this is not quite working, and we were able to kind of like redirect in that sense. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of conversations. It was a lot about trying lenses and ideas, and also not just with her, but also with Michael Shaw, the production designer, which is like he's just one production designer. There's like two of them,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which he's really like he has a great vision, and he helps so much to Hillary and myself in terms of look, in terms of like scouting and location picking, and when me and the director have an idea of like how to move the camera through a set, we go to Michael like, hey, how can we do this? We want to do this, and he's great. I mean, he also has like he's almost like the core of the show in a way as well.
Right. So, were you in the testing process as far as like picking lenses and camera? Could you talk a little bit about kind of like how and why you decided on a certain camera, lens, filtration, anything like that?
Yeah, I was not part of that because I
Okay.
was I was on a different project. I was shooting while they were doing that. So I was in Los Angeles shooting something else, and they were in New York. So I had conversations with Hillary, and I look at the tests, and we um, there was like, as any other lens test, you put a lot of tests together and see what rings a bell or not. And so yeah, when I went to New York, I did my own test as well, with the lenses and the camera, There were some detuning. We mainly show with the G series of Panavision
Hmm.
and complemented it with T series, which we tried not to um, use them as much because the G series were a little bit more softer and a little like a more beautiful flare, and the T were a little harder and not as cinematic, in my opinion. Like once we were there and like we're shooting and you put the G on and everything kind of like falls into place, like very painterly. The bouquet of the G series is also really beautiful. So those were our workhorses mainly. Like G series, we had some zooms as well. Um, when the pilot got reshot and Aaron and Justin came as directors, they also have their own vision of how things had to look. So we incorporated a little bit more zoom movements,
Hmm.
and they did a test that's on the pilot, which is like this crazy doom zoom that comes in when Matt is listening,
Hmm.
but that required like, and I didn't shoot on that rig. I went on set when they were shooting it, but that was like it was such an apparatus. It was like three different cameras on one dolly, and it took forever to rig. I mean, it's quite complicated. You need a lot of distance to have like the full zoom.
Right.
So that was not something we could do, even though we love it. It was not something we could be doing, every time Matt had a flashback or he was listening to something.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I I'm very familiar with the previous season, and I've watched the pilot, and I was trying to figure out what it was, and like as I'm thinking about it now, besides kind of being far away in the distance and zooming in, and feeling kind of the long lens, for me, I feel like what I saw was it felt more like you're looking at a comic book almost. Like, and I don't know if that's just
Mm-hmm,
me personally,
mm-hmm.
but it felt very much like a nod to Daredevil and his character in the comics versus so it's just interesting that you say that because I was like, yeah, it's really interesting. Like, were you familiar with the comics, or like what was your process as far as like going back into, I guess, the archive of everything Daredevil and trying to make sure that like you were familiar with the material?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I wasn't a massive fan. I was not like one of those hardcore fans of Daredevil before. I
Mm.
gotta be honest. And what's interesting too is like when Marvel decided to like all the department heads, Michael, Hillary, like we that was our first time also in the MCU or shooting an MCU project. So we were all coming also from like, independent film or some sort of TV shows and which was really interesting, like just all of us kind of like attacking the show. But I personally, like once for I got an interview, so I definitely put some time into like, watching the show, the previous seasons, and the comic book, and I put down a treatment and a visual treatment for the interview, and I had, it's something that you kind of like you need to be prepared and you need to know what the story is and how the characters develop and the storyline and the visualization of the show. So I definitely was like informed and I became actually what happened is like I became a fan of the show when
Hmm.
I was watching it for the interview. I was like, this is amazing, and I knew about it, and I think I saw some of it, but I didn't follow up. But then when I started getting into it, I was like, this is amazing, and I knew it was a really good show. But yeah, I kind of like became a fan as I was like preparing for it.
Right. was there a moment when you were filming um that you felt like okay, like I guess what is your favorite moment, whether it was like on screen or like off screen, just you personally working on this project, obviously without giving any spoilers or anything, but was there a moment that it comes to you right now and you're like, oh yeah, I loved when this happened, you know?
Um, yeah, I have favorite scenes for sure. Let's see. I guess one of my favorite moments was like shooting at the bank on episode. And have you seen the show?
I've only seen the first two episodes.
Yeah, so right. So episode 4 is a bank heist,
Hmm.
and the location was really special. It's a very special location in Wall Street, and we um, we have several locations, but that happened to be like the most appropriate for the story. It also was very cinematic, and it was just beautiful. And it happened that Inside Man shot on that um, location as well,
Hmm.
and it's a on the page is a direct reference of the episode. But what happened is like technically, it's a bank, and it's a lobby, and it has like maybe like 6 windows or maybe more between 6 and 10 on both sides.
Hmm.
Very big windows, like maybe 20, 15 feet long, 15 feet high, and maybe like 8 feet wide. And there's no direct light that comes into the lobby because there are like all these skyscrapers around it, and it's
Hmm.
Wall Street, so the streets are super narrow.
Right.
So technically, it was like very challenging for me to light it. I'm like, how, like you're literally standing in the middle of the set at noon, at midnight on a super sunny day, and it's like a cave. It's like my meter was
Wow.
like rating like 0.7 or something. I'm like, when it's like it's action scenes, and
Hmm.
we're there for like days, and also this was in winter, so I had to shoot day for night too. Like after a certain time, like 4 p.m., 5 p.m.
Right.
I had to like be ready to keep the same look, but at night. So as well, because like Wall Street, we couldn't close the streets. Um, and I was talking to my team, is like, well, I basically need to put like 18Ks through every window,
Hmm.
but we couldn't close the street, so we couldn't put the condors on the street or on the sidewalk. So we had to pick. It was very nerve wracking. I'm like, how am I gonna light this if I cannot push from outside? So long story short, we were able to do that. To put some lights from outside and have some open traffic while we were shooting, but also had to push more light from inside.
Hmm.
So I had to put some vortexes on top of the windows, but it ended up being a VFX help because we were shooting low angles and we're be
Right.
looking at
You're
the
seeing
lights
it.
in the
Yeah.
background. So it became a conversation like, well, this is amazing location, costs millions of dollars, but we're gonna be seeing lights in the frame. Like, how are we? We can't do that. Um, so anyway, I decided to just push from one side, like those vortexes, and have some contrast ratio that was like nice, also
Hmm.
for the scene, and then push from the ground. Um, but it was nerve wracking coming to that first day
Yeah.
at 5 in the morning and start to light everything up in like a big set and hope everything works. And after that, I was like relieved. I was like, okay, I think this is looking like something.
Right.
So
Yeah, especially
it's
when
one
your
of
meter
those.
is a point 0.7 when you start. You're like, that's that's a fresh start for sure.
Yeah, and it's also not something, like your classic New York City location that is like fifth floor walk up, and you're like, okay, well, I guess, I can work with some practicals and shoot towards the window at this time of the day and turn around. It's like, no, like there's no practicals that can light up the set this size.
Right.
Um, so that was a great moment and kind of like a win. And then because we were also shooting, as I was saying, for several days and day for night. And
Right.
I think what I love about the show is like, um, it's so focused on location too.
Mm-hmm.
Like trying to feature New York City, as it is, and not going into a volume screen or blue screen and try to do everything on stage, which of course we did. I mean, of course we had like main stages and blue screen, but apart from that, the team was really eager to go out in New York and find real locations that speak to the character and the story.
Right.
So in that sense, there were like really great locations that we have. There's one in particularly that I think it was my last day on the show, and it was a last scene with Fisk at the Montes when he the Buck shoots Luca and he's like sitting having dinner by himself. And Bimonte is such a iconic location in New York. It's one of the oldest restaurants in the city. So it was like, just being there and lighting it was like amazing. Like this looks already great. Like I just need to like, put some lights here and there and make it look like our show, but like those textures, and you can really feel and smell, like how Fisk would be eating in that diner. Like I think that I was really happy to go on scout for the show because there were all a lot of jewels that we could find around.
Right. So when you're filming a scene, like in your process, whether it's developing the shot list or like when you're scouting, like what particularly are you looking for as an artist to help communicate this story? Because I know sometimes you kind of want the photography to reflect what a character sees or feels, or like taste, like you said with Fisk, and it's just like, okay, how do you do that with a blind character? Or like, like what's the like were there just things that you're just like, okay, I want to make sure that I try to communicate this as it regards to Fisk, or make sure if I'm with Matt that, we'd be conscious of X, Y, or Z. Was there anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I feel like you bring up a good point because I think when you're scouting and finding locations, you kind of like really need to know the characters and like deeply because there's certain this is part of filmmaking, like all these curveballs that get thrown at you, and all of a sudden, like you find a location, it doesn't work, last minute, and then you scramble to find something else, but like it's not gonna be that other location, but what other place can you find that speaks to that character or that scene? Um, and if you don't know your characters or the story, it'll be harder to find or adapt to other locations.
Hmm.
Um, there was another moment on episode 4 where everything was in place on the schedule. Like schedules are such a pain and such a puzzle. I don't know how ADs can do that. I mean, it's like insane. Like
Hmm.
uh, the permit and the location and the closing down the street and all that stuff. And so for episode 4, we had it all kind of like planned out, except for like one fight scene, which was like the fight scene of Matt versus Devin, which is like one of the main robbers.
Hmm.
And we were such in a tight spot because we couldn't, there was a day and we had to fit in that day because of the workload, but we couldn't do a company move because we're in Wall Street. We couldn't close down the street because of the permit. We couldn't do so many things. So we're like, basically, we have to find something around here that we can just push the cars and go.
Right.
Um, and then one of the days I was going to location to the bank, I saw like a alleyway somewhere. I was like, oh, that's cool. But but you're like talking with the director, and all of a sudden you're in the van and it disappeared. And in my mind, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then this happened, and I was like, wait, I saw almost like a dream. I saw an alleyway somewhere here, but I didn't know where because I didn't know where we were being driven. So I had
Mm-hmm.
no idea where things were. I got disoriented. So I was like, we gotta find this alleyway. So we were all like the entire team, kind of like it was not a tech scout, but we were trying to find this location, and we finally found it. And it was like a block away, a block and a half away from our main location. And we're like, can we do a fight here? Yes. Does this respond to like how the architecture of like the bank, and does it feel like it's kind of like in the same neighborhood? And so we started checking some boxes and like, okay, this is great. So, like I feel like you still have to go super open to 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 the scoutings and to this process, and you'll be able to find what city has to offer to you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Awesome. And I know we're coming up on time, but one question that I always like to ask is, and this is kind of going back to um, Pedro that may have not had any series experience or films and maybe is still at Tish, or like what would you tell that cinematographer that might watch your work, Daredevil, and say, "Oh, okay, I want to create films and like television shows at that level, like where to start or how do I start?" What type of advice would you give them?
Well, I would say, someone gave me this advice, so it's not gonna be my advice. I'm just gonna like relate. Someone gave me, it was a older uh film director, Mexican guitar shifter. And I was in college. I was like, early 20s or something. And she was like, this is a marathon. This is not like a speed race. So if you feel like, you did something amazing, you accomplished your first movie, or you stay humble and keep working and keep, owning your craft and learning, because if you want to stay in this industry, which is super challenging and honestly super hard, and sometimes it gets harder as it goes forward. You gotta, it's like a marathon. You gotta mentally prepare yourself. You gotta stay fit. You gotta um, learn as much as you can, and that just stuck with me. So I feel like, sometimes I was feeling like I should be doing this at this time of my life. I should be, and as long as you keep working and keep like learning and stay active and shooting, things will fall into place. I think like, um, and also if you want to become a cinematographer, I would say like take acting classes and take see how it feels to be in front of the camera,
Hmm.
and see how my cinematography philosophy also is based a lot in actors and reactions, and see them how they work and how rigorous they are in their own craft as well, and take editing classes because that will make your shots better. And then maybe you don't start the frame here, you start a little, like you pan to the left and you start there, but that the cut is a little later. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like also, if you start thinking about editing, and maybe you'll become with better angles and better timing with the camera, or makeup. Like I feel like like taking all those different classes of different crafts in the filmmaking apparatus. It'll make you a better DP.
Right. No, that's awesome advice. For people that want to keep up with you and what you're doing, where's the best place to follow you? Is it a website? Is it Instagram? Like how should people connect?
Yeah, I have both. My website is my full name, Pedro Gomez Millan, with
Hmm.
two L's, Millan, and my Instagram is Pedro G Millan. So yeah, I try to be more active on Instagram, but you can find some of my shots there.
Awesome. And also watch Daredevil Born Again. So again, I want to thank Pedro for coming on the Capturing Light podcast. Be sure to follow him. Keep up with what he's doing. Reach out to him, like connect with him. He's a super cool, chill dude. Constantly making great work. Yeah, and he's just, like a nice human being. So connect with him. If you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out to me at Les Gaddis on Instagram. Probably the best and fastest way for me to see something if you're having a question or wanting to connect. You can always email me directly, les@gaddisvisuals.com. Or you can send it to info@gaddisvisuals.com. It's also another great way to email me if it's something that's a little bit longer form. Yeah, like that is all I have. I'm thinking my next podcast episode, and this is me kind of rambling without even thinking about it because I'm so prepared. I'm not sure if my next podcast I'm gonna have a guest or if I'm gonna speak because it's been so long since I've done a solo podcast, like so long. And I have thoughts, I have dreams, I have goals, I have things to talk about. So I might talk some of my recent work. I might talk some of my learnings and findings moving from Dallas to LA, and being in a different industry, same industry but different market, say it like that. There's quite a few things I've learned at the American Film Institute, AFI, that I think really have changed the way that I think about film. So yeah, there's things I want to talk about. So next podcast, it might be me. It might not be me, but there's a podcast with me on it coming in the future. So be on the lookout for that. That is all I got right now. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for rocking out with me. And we'll keep going, So I'll catch you in the next episode of Capturing Light.
Thanks for listening to Capturing Light with Les Gaddis, a director of photographers podcast. Inspiring and educating filmmakers like you so you can illuminate your vision. A Gaddis Visuals production.